Welcome back. Now we are on the last lap for the JavaScript tutorial and the final lap for the front end tutorial. So on this tutorial, I'll be teaching you the JavaScript event. All right. So the JavaScript event, the change in the state of an object is known as an event, right? In HTML, there are various events that represent that some activity is performed by the user or by the browser, right? When JavaScript code is included in HTML, the JS reacts over this event and allow the execution. This process of reacting to the event is called event handling. Alright, thus JS handles the HTML event via the event handler. For example, when a user clicks over the browser and adds JS code, which will execute the task to be performed on the event. Okay, now here are the keyboard events. Okay, the events performed and the event handler and their description. Now the key up and the key down and the key up. So the event handler on key down and on key up. All right. So this is the description. When the user presses and then release the key. Okay. So for the form events, you have the focus, the submit, the blur, and the change. And the event handler for those events are on focus, on submit, on blur, on change. And the descriptions are when the users focus on an element, when the user submits the form, when the focus is away from a form element, and when the users notifies or change the value of a form. All right. So the next thing now, we have the window and document events. For the events performed, we have the load, the unload, and resize. All right. For the event handler for each of these events performed are the unload, when the browser finishes the loading of the page, the unload, when the visitor leaves the current page, the browser unloads, and on resize, when the visitor resizes the window of the browser. Now the next thing we will be checking here is the JavaScript onClick event. All right, the onClick event generally occurs when the user clicks on an element. It allows the programmer to execute a JavaScript function when an element gets clicked. This element can be used for validating a form, or a warning message, and many more. Using JavaScript, this event can be dynamically added to any element. It supports all HTML elements except the HTML, the head, the title, the style, the script, the base, the iframe, the PDO, the BDO, the BR, meta, and the param. It means we cannot apply the onClick event on the given tags. All right. In HTML, we can use the onClick attribute and assign a JavaScript function to it. We can also use the JavaScript add event listener method and press a click event to it for greater flexibility. All right. Now in HTML elements, the element onClick function. In HTML elements, we have the element onClick function, and in JavaScript we have object.onClick function. Okay, in JavaScript, by using the add element listener method, object.add element listener method. Let's see how to use onClick event by using some illustration. Now we will see the example of using the onClick event in HTML and in JavaScript. All right. Okay, so we have the double click event. Okay, this is a double click event. Okay, the double click event generates an event on double click the element. The event fires when an element is clicked twice in a very short span of time. We can also use the JavaScript add event listener method to fire the double click event. In HTML, we can use the on double click attribute to create a double click event. In HTML, you use the syntax which is the tag, the element. You write the element, then you use the on double click attribute. While in JavaScript, you just put object dot on double click equals to function and the script. All right. Next, we have JavaScript onload. In JavaScript, this event can apply to launch a particular function when the page is fully displayed. It can also be used to verify the type and version of the visitor's browser. Okay, we can check what cookies a page uses by using the onload attribute. In HTML, the onload attribute fires when an object has been loaded. The purpose of this attribute is to execute a script when the associated element loads. In HTML, the onload attribute is generally used with the body element to execute a script once the content of the web page is completely loaded. It is not necessary to use it only with body tags, as it can be used with other HTML elements. Now, the difference between the document .onload and the window.onload is document.onload triggers before the loading of image and other external content. Note, document.onload triggers before the loading of image and other external content, right? It is fired before the window.onload, while the window.onload triggers when the entire page loads, including CSS file, JavaScript file, image file, etc. Right? So we have the JavaScript resize event. Okay. Now the JavaScript on resize event in JavaScript generally occur when the window has been resized to get the size of the window. We can use the JavaScript window.outerWidth and window.outerHeight events. We can also use the JavaScript properties such as inner width, inner height, and client width. Client width offers client height, and offset width, offset height to get the size of an element. In HTML, we can use the onResize attribute and assign a JavaScript function to it. We can also use the JavaScript add event listener method and pass a resize event to it for greater flexibility. Here are the syntax. Now we see the syntax of using the onResize event in HTML and in JavaScript without add event listener method, or by using the add event listener method. In HTML, we use the element, whatever element you want to use, and use the attribute of onResize and the function you want to pass. While in JavaScript, you use object.onResize and the function you want to pass. And now we've come to our end of the tutorial. Front-end development with Yusuf Abdulrasheed on UDevOps. Thank you for your time, and I hope you had a useful and a wonderful learning period with UDevOps, and see you in our next season coming up very soon, which is the UDevOps cohort 3. All right, now bye bye and take care of yourself. Bye bye.